You guys know if you ever want me to pause the recording for any reason, I'm happy to do that as well. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Vince. Here,
I gotcha.
I thought the space bar took off the mute. Maybe I did something with the video. It's a tap. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, if you're muted and you hold the space bar down, you unmute while you've got it down. At least that's what
Hmm.
I've read. Yeah, but you're
It
muted
seems
now.
like act- it's acting like a toggle for me.
Mm.
It's fine.
Well, let's get into it, eh? So how's life been, Scott? How's it been for you for the last week? Getting triggered much?
Stopped
No.
working.
Yeah.
I've been fine. I've been okay. I don't know. I'm just kind of floating around right now. I did get triggered once. It was silly because it was had to do with some stuff from childhood, and I could see as it was happening, it was like the other person did not do anything wrong at all, and I could feel like my arousal level coming up, and it was a learning experience because like it reinforced, like I realized that a lot of distress for me is caused by like I'll have something come up and then it doesn't pass because I'm trying to stuff it down. I've automatically like labeled it as negative. And so really I think I'm upset about what's going on, but really I'm upset that it happened. You know what I mean? I'm just really uh, uh self-judgment. Um
Yeah.
anyway,
So
as it was happening, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know the first arrow, second arrow analogy that floats around?
I kind of heard it, but it's not clear in my mind.
Well, it's pretty simple. I think the Buddha said something along the lines of pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional. So that's kind of another take on it. It's not true, I don't think, in my mind, but nevertheless, the flavour of it is, and that is that something happens, and that's the pain, and then we react to it, and then we react to our reaction, and then we reintroduce the pain by thinking about that or retelling that story, and then we respond to that, and so that what we get is a spiraling off into a whole lot of suffering. When in fact, if we just went, oh, isn't that interesting? It'll be finished. No suffering. Just just the original thing. And it comes back to this, it's never what comes up, it's always about what's underneath it, what triggers it. So no matter what the story is that you got triggered, whatever the circumstances were, they just triggered something that already existed in you. And you don't have to know what it is. There's not an imperative to find out what it is. Just recognizing that it comes from within is a huge, huge first step. There's no judgment, there's no opinion, there's just recognizing that, okay, that thing, you saw that he did nothing, and that there was your response to something that was imagined.
Completely. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like it just happened to. It was just the structure of the conversation just matched something from my childhood. I mean, I even recognize what it is, and I
yeah.
could see it happening. I could feel the arousal coming up, and I'm like, and it wasn't going away. Like I did my normal thing, walked towards it, let the cognition kind of just dissipate, and then go to the center. But what was happening, which I guess I was unconscious of, is I was judging myself for allowing it to happen. Like it shouldn't have happened.
Well,
And
that's
I
pretty. That's
kind of
pretty clever, isn't it? I'll jump in again. That's pretty clever. That judging yourself is a way of keeping away from what's going on, right? Let's not whip ourselves for the original. Let's make up a new one and whip ourselves for that. It's a
that's a
really, really skillful way of avoiding the original unpleasantness. Now it's not that I got triggered because of this other thing. Now I'm an arsehole for whatever.
I've never looked at it like that before. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I-
this whole idea of I'm less than or whatever, it's all just a diversion from other
absolutely. A
things.
diversion away from whatever triggered the whole thing to come up. Yeah. Oh, this is juicy, isn't it?
Very.
So can you remember where you were when I interrupted you?
No, it doesn't matter.
No, I don't either.
It doesn't
Sorry.
matter. No,
Yeah.
you're good. You're good.
Yeah, that's such a hard one to get across to people, because we we immediately the reason that those circumstances triggers us is it because it reminds us in some way of what the original toxic starting point is. Right? Because it reminds us of that, that triggers that old memory in us, and it's going to be a body memory. It's not even going to be intellectual. You're not going to get it in your head. It's going to be something that that got embedded in your cells, so to speak. I mean, that's a story, but that's a good way to look at it. And so you get triggered by those circumstances, and instead of having any chance of looking at what those circumstances were, how they fitted with, and getting that fraction closer to the original whatever it is, it's not going to be single thing, whatever that original hurt was. We immediately get sucked into the story of the actual circumstances that happened, and that's a good way to keep away from what's going on inside. I mean, we don't do that on purpose, of course. It's not a plot. But it's just a natural thing. We don't want to feel that shit because we've already come to the conclusion that what we can't do anything about it, maybe. Right? So it's in the past. Does that mean we can't do anything about it? Because it's not really in the past. It's in the present. It just started in the past.
The conditioning is here now.
Well,
Mm.
the conditioning to put that got the original trauma embedded. That happened. and then we got very skillful at avoiding it over the time, and we kept doing things in order to avoid it. So, and then we kind of we it's really weird. We can go through life being triggered by it without actually realizing that it's even there, because we keep on putting our attention out there to the circumstances that triggered us.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can wake up, because I was totally flabbergasted that I could actually see what was happening, and yet the reaction was still coming, and and I was like, why isn't it going away? I'm doing, and then that's when I realized I was doing it to myself. I was
Yep, yep, yep.
had gone another step, and I was just basically hammering myself instead of
Okay, yeah, yeah. So now I get a bit of a conflict here because you were saying before that you were doing what you do, which is move towards it, and then you just finished saying the opposite.
yeah, yeah.
Now,
Well, I
they can both exist. It's not a case of one or the other.
So in right now, as I'm perceiving it, I'm thinking of the original arousal event as a separate thing from this. It seemed like it was the same, but then I realized I was like, it had gone past that, and that the arousal was now just because I was like hammering myself. I'm kind of confused, so I might not be making sense.
I get it. Well, I think I get it, and that you're saying that yes, that you got the original trigger happened, and you kind of saw how that what that was based on. You saw the earlier event that created that situation, but before you could actually do anything about it, which is only really the only thing to do is to look at it, just to be really relaxed and see it in detail and not have judgments about it. But there you go. There's a segue into what actually happened was that you started to judge yourself and got into a secondary situation, which was a clever way to avoid the primary one. Is that what you were telling me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly what I was telling you. Well, I'm kind of confused right now. So I feel like, because it's a kind of a common theme. So I'm trying to, like, right now, I feel like if I could figure a way to like make it clear that when I get triggered or when something happens, that it's an opportunity, and that I should be curious about it to see what's going on, and that it's okay for it to happen. It's like, I think what one of the main things for me that keeps me sealed into it is that, you know, switch over to like, oh, it's my fault. I should, how did I let that happen? Why can't I, you know what I mean? Like, just
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
blame. How come I can't, how come it's still here and hanging in there when really the whole time it's there because I'm keeping it there, by judging myself.
Well, that's another judgment you just did on yourself.
I don't
Okay,
doubt that at all. Yeah.
you're not keeping it there, and that you're not being a naughty boy and doing it wrong. Uh, it's happening that it's not going, but it is going. It's right. What's happened to you? I don't know if you recognise that, but the fact that you were able to see, even though that other thing happened, the fact that you were able to see what was behind it and that as it arose and as it was happening. Now that's a pretty major thing. Right? That's absolutely brilliant. That's like you've got the door is three-quarters open. You just didn't walk through it, but it's open. So that's a major achievement. And blah, blah, well, achievement's not the right way to put it either. But you know what I mean. It's a significant milestone. if we wanted, that nothing I can say is going to make it right. But you know what I mean, you know?
It's like you can't speak. Like every time you speak, it's like, oh, that's not right. That's not right, quite right. Like you
Uh,
can't really say it the right way. It seems like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so.
So,
But
so again, you've got to get this. Everything kind of comes back to a whole lot of lessons, you know. So the other one is there can be no right or wrong. You can't do it wrong, but you can't do it right either. You can't even do it. That's another story again, a different one. But what I'm saying is, all of that's just an overlay. It's just a moral overlay, a made up story about things that, you know. So even when I say, oh, it's good, it's a significant milestone, that's still a story. Um, but it is good because it's a tool you've got now that you didn't know you had before, and that's a significant thing.
yeah, I was gonna say it's good too, and then also as it was getting ready to come out of my mouth, I'm like, wait a minute, it can't be good. It's not good or
Uh,
bad.
uh, uh,
Like,
well, it can be good and there's no such thing as good at the same time. There you go. That's
well,
that's
the relative. In the relative, it's good. In the absolute, it's neither good
that's
nor
right.
bad, I
It's
guess.
irrelevant. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So and what you're really doing, if you can recognise it, step back a little bit, you know, from a neuroscience perspective, for example, is you're changing your brain. Changing your brain. That's not insignificant either. Right? So what you're doing is you're developing new pathways on the right side of your brain where everything's wonderful and as it should be and all of that stuff. And you're kind of letting the ones on the left side kind of get a bit frustrated and not finishing them off and allowing them to atrophy through less work and so on and so on. You know, you're giving your left brain a pretty big break. But by golly, there's a lot of habit there, isn't there?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's there's a lot. There's a lot.
It just occurs to me that maybe if you're a Star Wars, Star Trek, if you're a Star Trek fan, you could have a Mr. Spock personality that you could adopt, right? Or pretend to be a robot, right? And go, what just happened? And so you're doing it absolutely dispassionately, looking at just what the behavior was, just what the response was, just what the sensations were, just what thoughts turned up, not having any opinion about them, just watching. Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, get into this because it'll get boring after a while. You're like once you get through this, things will slow down and you'll get bored with it really. So this is an exciting part for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's actually good. It's it's a good thing if they're in the relative that those things happen because it gives you the what you need to grow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a strong there's a strong conditioning that wanting to just it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. If it feels bad, it's bad.
Yeah. I guess that's why they call it liberation. It's not being locked into all of those, a lot of those huge number of those socially shaped responses to things. So now you got to wait to be triggered again.
I used to like get up in the morning and everything's different now, but I used to get up in the morning and just like I would start going to do whatever it was I was going to do and have this feeling in my gut, um, like just the less anything of the day starting, what I'm going to fuck up now. I mean, that's how bad I was, and like that stuff is pretty much gone. And like I very rarely ever get a feeling like that. And when I do, I just like I go, oh, there it is. Let me see. Let me feel it. Yeah, it's doesn't mean anything. It's just and
Yep,
so that has almost completely gone.
yep. And that attitude doesn't lock it in if it does turn up. That's good to, yeah. Well, that's a major shift, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, this stuff. It's the best stuff that ever happened to me. Like awake, not awake, asleep, whatever. This is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, well, I guess really we're just fine tuning that now.
So many different ways, different angles that I have a tendency to want to try to like conceptualize them all so I can use them. But there's so many and there's so many and you get blinded. There's blind spots depending upon what you know, what you're thinking at the moment or what you're not thinking. I don't really know what makes it, but I can see how like sometimes I can use something and then I might use it for like a week and then it kind of fades away and something else comes up but I'm my residual like wanting to control, even though I know that I can't control, wants me to like be able to conceptualize all this stuff and have it at my fingertips, and it doesn't seem to work that way.
No, seeking for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away recently by when just having a look at what goes on at POK and so on. There's literally 1,000 different portals into this stuff from all sorts of angles. All the different therapies like family, whatever, family. I forget. Yeah, and
I have,
TRE, trauma release stuff, and so on and so on. A lot of ways. All good stuff.
what
Yeah.
is what's POK? What's that?
It stands for perfectly okay, but it's an organisation or a group. It's a group. It's a not-for-profit group that do things like have meetings like this, but only they have about 80 every week.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah, but lots of different things, but they're not really. Well, they kind of touch on the edge of non-duality stuff, and some of them are awake for sure. Yeah, yeah.
I've never heard.
Yeah, there's a lot more of us weirdos than just the few that turn up here.
Oh man.
Mm.
Yeah, like that sparked my interest immediately, and then I was like, oh yeah, yeah, he wants to seek. It's talking about
Yeah,
the
yeah,
fake
yeah,
me. It's a seek, and he said, oh yeah, that lit up his brain. Yeah, like yeah, let me go find that place and let me dive into that. Like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, these groups and I'm not trying to butter you up, but this group in particular is just absolutely amazing.
Well, you're it. Mm.
Well, I haven't been doing any other meetings right now, almost anything else. I do my little breathing in the morning and like a micro meditation where I throw love on Donald Trump and I throw, I throw love on the parts of my body, that hurt. And then that's all I do, that and this meeting, or I go for a walk, and obviously things are, I, I'm looking at the sound field and all that stuff, but it just kind of just happened, I kind of,
Yeah,
so I'm not structuring anything other than trying to be ready in the morning for this, this group. And I haven't even gone to this. I guess it's the Monday group for you. It's Monday, but I haven't even gone to that one since trying to pull back a little bit.
yeah. Well, these seem to be slowing down a bit with the number of people that come, at least. Um, so I'm wondering about that. It could be for a whole lot of reasons. Yeah,
Well, this was a time shift on this. This is the first time it's an hour earlier, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this particular one. And what about the other ones? Are they at the same time or
They're the same
just?
time, yeah. But I am open to shift it around. It's just, I mean, the other last week, this one was an hour later, and it was really late for a couple of people that were here, and so I moved it back an hour, and then I made Ray get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning for it. So, so it's a bit hard to get everybody. Mm.
Yeah, early morning doesn't bother me. I'm up early.
How are you going, Ray? You got a serious look on your face tonight.
I feel like I don't know, I'm always looking a bit serious a lot of the time, I guess. I'm looking serious or I guess I'm smiling. Um, things are going okay. I actually didn't really have any trouble waking up for this meeting because I'm sort of having trouble sleeping lately. And so I was up and it was no big deal. I was kind of looking at the clock and being like, well, I think I'm going to be up for this meeting. And so here I am. Um, I think last time we talked about you and I had talked about like acceptance. Um, and I think there are some things that are still a little bit out of my reach as far as that goes. Um, so and I think one of the things for me that's just like confusing is dealing with my kids, like my little kids, my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old, because I yeah, drawing boundaries for them is challenging because um you'd said something like, well, if my wife asked me to take out the garbage or something, I just take it as the universe telling me I need to go take out the garbage, and I don't think about it too much. I just go and do it. But with my and first of all, that is already like out of right now, it feels out of my reach, right? Like I'll still have a lot of feelings of annoyance, resentment, or something that I do feel like I'm sort of I have them and I judge myself for them and I kind of like tamp them down and then I go take out the garbage, whatever. Like that's something. With my kids, it's almost just like it's more of a question mark because they're just like, hey, Dad, we want to eat 5 pieces of candy right now. And I'm kind of, and then I'm just like, is that like right now, that doesn't feel like the right thing for me to let them do. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think those situations, now that I'm kind of looking for them, those situations show up a lot more than I had realized. And so I don't really know what to do about them, I guess is kind of that's what comes to mind for me right now. Um,
So just stay with that example for a moment. Just to let's look at the label boundaries, what we
Mm.
mean by boundaries, or let's come back to that. But let's just have a look at what your conflict is that you don't want to let them eat 5 bits of candy, but you are letting them eat 5 bits of candy. Is that what you're saying?
no.
No?
No, I'm not. And that's always been my default mode, which is kind of like, no, that's not a thing that, you know, I want you to I guess hmm. I've been trying to think about it like it's a bit like, is the universe telling me I need to let my kids eat 5 pieces of candy? And for me, it's like there's a very strong pull to just be like, no, I don't want my kids eating that much candy right now, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, no. Well, it's obvious. It's obvious that that's not really a good thing to do, is it? You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
even 1 bit is probably too much, but we might go along with 1 bit.
Mm.
So why do you think? Well, this is an interesting challenge here. Wh- Why do you think the universe was telling you about allowing your kid to eat 5 bits of candy? Wasn't the universe giving you the opportunity to educate them about their health?
Mm,
That was equally
ye-
an opportunity as the other, was it not?
yeah, I suppose so. Um, I think trying to parse out what of that is like thought, what of that I'm sort of adding to the experience, and like what to try. I think it comes down to doubt a lot of the time, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That certainly sounds like doubt there. Yeah.
mhm. And so, to contrast it with my relationship with my wife, when my wife is like, "Hey, go do this thing," there's a part of me that's just like, well, like maybe if I feel like she's not like maybe if I feel like she's, disrespecting me or something, I need to stand up for myself and have a boundary or have some kind of discussion. And that really hasn't been fruitful. And I have the same kind of doubt where I'm just like, I think this is my ego acting up and just like picking a fight where there doesn't need to be one, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and so for me, like that's fertile ground for work on myself where it's like, okay, well, how
Sure,
much of
sure.
this is ego? Like how much of this is thought just trying to run me in circles?
Okay, just stop for a second. How
Mm,
much is ego and how much is thought
mm,
are both questions that invite judgment.
hmm
Are they
hmm
are they not? Yeah.
No, they say, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And
So could you reframe that to be more accurate about what your experience was?
yeah, so like in a situation where, my wife has asked me to do something, there will be like a flash of annoyance
Mhm.
or anger, perhaps, depending on what the situation is. Um, and this is, you
This
know,
is this is good. Do you notice that you've switched from first person to third person in the
mm,
sense that you're describing a response. You're describing responses in yourself, a flash of annoyance or whatever, right? So it's like you're talking about it from the outside, whereas when you
Mhm.
first told it, you were telling it from the inside.
Hmm.
So you were expressing the emotion. Now then you switched over to describing it. It perhaps wasn't very clear to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm also, I, I guess another question that pops up for me now is like, is that a good thing, I guess? Or is that like,
So can I give you my rubber stamp that says rubbish thought?
uh,
Is that a good thing? Or any sentence that's got should or shouldn't in it? We can just put this rubbish stamp, rubbish thought stamp on it.
okay. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm, yeah.
it's a technique, just and one that might or might not work, or that'll come and go. But yeah,
Mm,
so all of a sudden we've got a lot less to say, haven't we? Because we're not we just need to describe our experience as
mhm.
if we're Dr. Spock or a robot just cataloging it.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So then now you're going to say there's this flash of annoyance. Hey, so what's that? There's this instant body reaction. It's probably a contraction, but anyway, okay, well that's another label too. But all right, so there's this body reaction, and it's got that flavour of prickliness about it. And then there's a thought that turns up that says, "Oh, is this ego or is this just a thought?" And then there's another thought that turns up and says, "No, I don't have those thoughts," etc. You know, like on and on and on.
Yeah.
So there is that objective way of describing what goes on. And as soon as we do that, I mean, I overplayed it a little, but you can immediately see how the moment you have this question about is that ego or is it just a thought? Straight away another thought comes along that says, well, that's a fruitless path to go down because they're just stories about ego and just thoughts and so on. But the
Yeah.
actual experience was that turned up that thought. And now that we can see the name of the book on the cover, we can go, well, let's not open it up and get involved in the content of that one. Let's just allow it to keep on going and what else is going on. So do you know why? Do you know what's underneath getting annoyed when you get a job like that? You feel disrespected. You feel like a
Yeah.
slave being ordered around.
Yeah. That is, there's some element of that. I, when I look at it, it is a bit like um my effort or my experience is sort of being made to seem less valuable than her or whoever's giving me the job. It's a feeling of maybe something like that. Yeah, it's kind of what you said.
So how about this one? I'm just playing here. How about this one?
Mm.
Y- You're too important to take the garbage out.
No?
There's nobody further down the food chain to you to do it because the kids are still too young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, that's kind of where I always end up. where I'm just like, look, I'm gonna go do the thing. Like
Yeah,
I'm like that's where it ends up, right? And so I've tried, you know, and there's like this, all of this for me right now, it still feels effortful, right? I'm not like, none of this is, I've almost just come to accept it's not going to be this easy, effortless thing where I'm just like, I totally, you know, it's easy for me to accept things. Like there's a little bit of a ping pong back and forth, and I try to see it and be like, well, that is an interesting thing that just happened. Now I'm going to go do this thing I've been asked to do. Um, so that's sort of the approach that I'm taking now, and it's a bit too early to call it in terms
sure.
of
Yeah, yeah.
how
You know,
successful it is. Or,
can you appreciate how hard it is to move from being one way to being another way? You know, that's not easy for anybody to do, because especially the fact that the other way, we've been that way or developing into that all our life. So
Mhm.
it's like there's a lot behind it. Now all of a sudden we're kind of looking at saying, oh well, let's be a different person, and I'll give it 3 weeks. You know,
Mhm.
it takes as long as it takes, and it's faster for some and not for others, and slower for some and not for others. So it's like, yeah, it is a busy time. But you know what? The hardest thing is to go from being a controller and a doer to not being a controller and a doer, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, because it only seemed like. So the hardest thing, let's put it better then, the hardest thing is to move from feeling like you're a doer and an achiever and so on, and and what you've been told all your life, the harder you work, the more likely you are to get success, and that success is the what we're after here, and we've got to chase it and work hard to get it. And that is all the opposite of what we really need to do to get there. So how do you go from being brought up to be somebody in control doing stuff to being somebody that's relaxed and sensitive enough to recognize the direction that the breeze is coming from and move with it to flow? That's
Mhm.
that's impossible for some people, or it
Yeah.
seems that way. But it's not an easy task. Be patient.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't happen at in a linear pace either. It kind of accelerates and plateaus and accelerates and plateaus. And there's hills and valleys. We go forward and backwards, up and down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting the philosophy, and it seems really easy. It seems that simple. Yeah, there's a lot in it when you're trying to actually implement it yourself. There's a lot in it.
Yeah. Um, no, that's been a, yeah, even in the short time that I've sort of been looking at this stuff, it is very, I don't know. It's definitely been a challenge. But I feel like I'm learning a bit about myself too, and that's I don't know, that seems all right.
Yeah, great.
Um, I think just going back to the first example, just with my kids, there's an additional layer of doubt where it's like, do I know if I'm doing the right, do I even know the right thing to do here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
with my wife, it's like I'm gonna end up taking out the garbage. Like I'm just gonna go take it out. Right? Like I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
That's
that's the easy one. Yeah, yeah, I know.
yeah. With the kids, it's like, all right, they want 5 pieces of candy. Ooh, I feel like that's probably not the right thing to do here. And I know it's going to be a very unpopular decision in the
Yeah,
moment,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like there's going to be some pain here for everyone
Everybody
involved.
concerned. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then
yeah.
it's like, all right, so do I give a little bit of ground and do like 1 piece of candy? Like, is that my counter offer, or is that also a bad thing to do? Like, there's a lot of room for doubt there. Um, and so I think like that is the most that's the situation that comes up the most where I'm kind of like confused about like so many layers of doubt and kind of insecurity. And I mean,
Yep, I get it.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah. So, so look, my wife and I both agree laughingly that our kids turned out all right in spite of us, and certainly not because of us.
Mm,
I kind of I have this story that's fairly active actually that says all kids suffer trauma. Every single kid suffers trauma. There's no getting away from it because for a kid, it's traumatic if you don't get the second bit of candy if that's what you want.
mhm,
It's for a kid, you've got rules and boundaries everywhere that you can't cross, and you're a second grade person, you get ignored, you get told what to do all the time. It's just a horrible place being a kid, maybe.
mhm,
So every kid's got trauma, and every adult has got a traumatized kid inside them, I think, to one degree or another. And obviously, for a lot of people, they're so good at hiding it and avoiding it that they do that for their whole life, and it never becomes a real big deal for them. And for others, it does. Um, for us, it's something we want to clean up. We see how it interferes with our life currently, or how it affects or influences our life currently. And so it's an opportunity for us, because we know that it can be changed. So that's a good thing. But you certainly don't go up to somebody in the street throwing a tantrum and say, well, do you want to change your life? It's it's just not going to happen. They're going to punch you out, if anything, probably. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
Mm,
so my call it what you like. My old man's wisdom, I'll call it that, says the important thing with your kids is to be authentic. And I would also say being spontaneous is good value, but there are consequences to everything. So, you as well as being authentic with yourself is the best place to start. And that way you go, okay, it's not that there is an objective situation here that it is bad for my child to eat 7 pieces of candy. Right?
mhm,
That's probably a given, but regardless, that's not the issue. The issue is I feel strongly that it's the wrong thing to do. Now,
yeah.
how do I skillfully convey that message over without having them throwing a tantrum and me getting upset because they're upset and everybody in the vicinity getting upset because everybody else is upset and so on? So there's a bit of skill involved in that next step. How do I do that? And with kids, I mean, I'm a great one to talk. My dog is 11 years old, and I still can't get the fucking thing to walk beside me. It just wants to pull on the lead all the time. You know, I can't train a dog, so I don't talk to me about training kids. But so you have got you've got this situation where you set limits for them, and once those limits are established, then there's a lot less fighting and trauma and pushing and pulling against those limits if they're accepted. And there's got to be some consistency for that to happen as well. So we don't let them have 7 bits of candy today, but not next week, because then they can't pick what's going on. There's no consistency. So
Mhm,
if you always say 1 bit, and this is a fact, kid, 1 bit is what's going to happen. So you've had a decent meal, and then you brush your teeth, etc. Whatever rules that you do, being consistent with them is probably a good thing for most kids. But you're not going to get a baseball bat out and give them a hard time with that if they disobey you or if they don't want to go along with you. You just have to be
Mhm.
skillful about it,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a trick, you know. So I mean, my father belted me, and I said, I won't treat my kids like you treat me. So I didn't belt my kids, but I yelled at them a lot. And now I see that as just as abusive as if I were belting them, you know. So we as parents, I find, and I see it a lot around me, we're reduced to using power to control our kids, force, and it's violent. So how do we get our kids to do what we want when they don't want to do it? You know, what happens if our kid throws a tantrum on the floor of the supermarket because that lolly shelf that they've put at his eye level, I mean, it's just too tempting, you know? What do you do? Oh my God, that's a hard one, isn't it? Let's say you avoid that aisle altogether if you've got the child in tow. But, you know, yeah, it's a tricky one. Well, I don't
Mhm.
know that there's any answer, but I do know that there's an awful lot of opportunity for you to look at what
Yeah.
happens in you when they behave when they're around. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that's been on my mind a lot is kind of acceptance and trying to, accept some of the situations I find myself in, and um like maybe I'm just not um
Maybe you don't know what acceptance is.
oh, I mean, yeah, I totally get that is a very real possibility. I mean,
So this acceptance, there's an acceptance that you can imagine leads to resignation. You know, that's
mhm,
being a victim and resigning and being okay then, okay, all right, if I have to, yeah, that kind of acceptance. That's not what we're talking about with acceptance.
mhm,
There's a willing, inviting kind of it's okay kind of acceptance that but acceptance. Yeah, see, it's a, tricky here. Acceptance is also just a story. So even though we've said all that about the kind of acceptance, really what acceptance means, if there is acceptance, you don't know that there's acceptance. You could think back over it and maybe apply that story to it. But if there's acceptance, what it means, what is actually happening is that there's no resistance. But the absence of resistance, we're just calling acceptance, but the absence of resistance is what? It can't really be put into words. It's like a free flow, the absence of resistance. And so, and it flows at exactly the pace that we're moving at. So it's not noticeable. If you're in a river and the flow is carrying you down the river and you shut your eyes, you've got no idea that you're moving. And acceptance is a bit like that. You're just moving at the same pace as everything else. And so there's no obvious way to notice that you're actually having acceptance, that it exists. Tricky one.
mhm,
I would suggest that contemplating acceptance would be a really good thing for you to do. Play with all of the kind of angles that you can come at that you might see as acceptance. Look it up in the dictionary, look it up in the thesaurus, look for alternative words as well. But always come back to what is the feeling that you get when you do that contemplation. And so can you get a feeling of the state of no feeling that we might call acceptance? You know, so when I'm sitting there and my wife says, "Will you take the scraps out?" and I just go, "Oh, okay," and I just get up and move towards it, it's like minimal. There's still a moment of resistance. It doesn't have any strength. It doesn't have anything, but there is that moment where it's almost like I, how do I put it? It's almost like there's a choice to do something else or not to do it fast or to delay it or to interfere with just that movement of getting up and doing it. And that the fact that that happens is that is some kind of resistance. Because if there was absolutely no resistance, if there was perfect acceptance going on there, absolutely no resistance at all, there would be no thoughts about getting up and doing it. It would just be a happening. Getting up and doing it would happen without even the realization almost that it's happening. So there's fine tuning it is still happening here, even though it's been going on for a while, that kind of thing. But there's a really beautiful feeling of something to do with energy efficiency. You know, that the universe says it's taking the scraps down now is what will happen, and it actually happens with a minimal of scratching going on. Strange stuff. It's like there's kind of a movement towards direct experience. You know, that is there's a contradiction there too. It's not. It's the one I've contemplated a bit, and I haven't come to any conclusions, so I'm still contemplating it, is to be aware of something. Does that require thought? Or is it to be aware that I'm aware that requires thought? So that metacognition, that meta awareness, if I'm aware that I'm aware, then I'm definitely thinking about being aware as I'm describing it and I'm putting, whatever. But if I'm aware, is it possible for me to be aware and not be aware that I'm aware?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I look back and see that to come here and sit down and start this meeting, what I did was I got up out of a chair and I walked around a coffee table and over into the hallway and I turned left and I went into the hallway and then I went down and I went into the bedroom and I picked up these headsets and then I came and the power supply for my computer and I came back and I didn't think about any of that. So obviously I can concoct a story that said I was aware of the fact that I didn't bump my shin on the coffee table when I went past. I walked around it. But it wasn't part of my experience to be aware of that. That's just a story I can make up now when I use my memory and look back over it. So I can be aware and not be aware that I'm aware, at least at story level. But if I go, oh yeah, I'm aware that I'm missing that coffee table, so I'm aware of the fact that I'm aware, then I'm just in my head. That's a different experience altogether. So it's like that also with acceptance. If there's acceptance, there's no thoughts about it. You don't know that you've got acceptance happening. But the opposite, you do know. When there's resistance, you certainly know that because it gets things going in you. Lights a fire. So how can you decide to have acceptance? You can't. You've either got it or not. But in the back of your mind, because we've been talking about it, there's this idea that says, oh, it'd be good to have acceptance. It'd be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you move from having resistance to not having resistance? That's a much better way to put it. That's a good question. How do you move from having resistance to not having resistance? Well, the first thing you don't do is say having resistance is bad. That's just a diversion away from the resistance. That's just off into the head again. And you don't need to say, well, it's good either. You just need to look at what it is. What is it? What is the experience of having resistance? And if you can look at it without a judgment, it will be much clearer. You'll get much closer to it. You've got to get friends with this stuff. That's another way to put it. You've got to get friends with your demons in order to get close enough to see what they really are made of. And then they dissipate. They dissolve. But you can't fight them into submission. You've got to get friends with them, and then they'll go away.
Yeah, that resonates with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning.
Howdy.
Hey. I'd love to just come in after that because what Ray's talking about, I really resonate with. I've got a 17-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum, so the meltdown threshold is quite low. It certainly has been when he was younger, and I struggle with that. And then something's happened over the last few weeks. I don't know what's happened. When you talked about the brain changing, that made a lot of sense. I feel really content at the moment. And so my son has trouble getting his words out. He just takes a long time. If you just say, how are you? It just takes a long time. So at the beginning, there was this force to be patient. Like, I have to be patient. Like, it's the wrong thing to and finish your sentence. But there was a real internal grapple with being patient. And there was such compulsion to get out of that moment, go and do something, and come on. And the whole thing's just totally changed. And I wouldn't say I consciously started, this just happened, but when that, I think I got much more in touch with the sensation inside the body. Like I could feel everything tensing up, and then it would have a story like, oh gosh, come on, we've got to go, and we're going to be late, and you know, and then this is it just ran off on a train journey. And so I kept looking at the before it even got to the story, just looking at that sensation. And then I just started looking at a feature on his face. And maybe it'd be an eyebrow, or the color of his eyes, or his lips. And this last month, I've really, really, really got to know his face. And it occurred to me that I've never really looked at people's faces because I've been so much here. And then what happens is, without all that resistance and stories, I don't know what, something just happens. Like the words come out and we get on our way, or an idea comes, something happens. I can't say specifically the same thing happens, but there's just that. I suppose it's what Pernilla calls the gap. I guess that's what she's talking about. I don't really understand all the terminology, but it's just that moment of like taking it away from here. And like you said, Vince, just being what experientially is going on here. And there's been a lot more, I don't even want to use the word acceptance, because it's just going on. I don't really do anything, but there's been a lot more self-forgiveness. Like when I have those thoughts that I mean, I had some really low times recently, and I just said, well, I just kept saying, well, that's it. You know, if you want to think like that, just think. It's just, I'm not going to resist those thoughts anymore. I'm not going to go for it. And there's just been a lot more peace. And then a situation came up yesterday where I was involved in a conversation where somebody was being very unreasonable to somebody else that I respect and like, and they had totally got in their head that this person was untrustworthy, and it was appalling. I'd never really experienced, even my corporate days, and never experienced that kind of behavior. And so I just went in and just had a look at what was going on. And I could sense the pull towards the personal, like, what does this mean to me? And then I just kept going back to the sensations. And there was just that slowing down. There was like a pause to that this is not about me. This is not about, because the fear came up, that there was fear of like, or if that was me, I'd be crying and be out of here. But it just stayed with what was going on. I mean, it was just going on. There was nothing I could do. And then I managed to intervene. I did manage to say something, which I'd never been able to do. I didn't have the capacity or the bravery to stand up. And that was one of the things when I was really low. Like I don't stand up for myself. I don't stand up for other people. And there was an opportunity to do that. But none of this is like, I can't say that I've done anything. It's just, stuff's just changing. It's yeah.
Can you give some of that to Ray? He'd just love a bit of that.
Just keep coming to these meetings. And sometimes I can't get to the meetings, or I'm out driving, or so I just listen, or I replay them. I was painting the downstairs toilet, and I was just listening to one of the conversations. I just felt even though I wasn't saying anything, I was there. Because I resonated, and I just knew, and then stuff just percolates, stuff percolates. So, I mean, the biggest thing is just the sensations in the body. And I wish I'd been taught that years ago, really do. And I'm just working on Theta 3, just starting Theta 4. And there's an exercise at looking at the wants, like some real strong wants, and really get into the feeling of what that feels like. And I had a moment where, because I took an example, and I could clearly see that it's a thought. It's a thought, the same as insights I'd had about other thoughts. This is no different. But it seems like the feeling has been so ingrained that you follow that feeling, but this one's real. Like, this thought is really real.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting with the feta thing, and that's where the gap really first comes into play with feta 4 and 5 with
Right.
that. And so you're almost doing it spontaneously, but there is a little bit of technique that you can bring to that will make it a bit more productive. And so the really interesting thing is that when you start to get close to that sensation,
Mhm.
you reach a point where you're not quite close enough to touch it, but you're close enough to see that it's the stories that give it meaning. It's not, the meaning is not in the sensation itself. There is no instruction. Is no information in the sensation. A sensation is just a sensation. It's a body thing, right?
Mhm.
But the stories that hang off it, the stories that come along with it, the stories that, and when you're in that place we call the gap, you're kind of in between the stories and the sensation. So you can see the sensation kind of over there, and you can see the stories that want to grab a hold of it, that want to give it meaning, and you just allow those stories to be on that side of you, right? And the whole idea is to recognize that the sensation itself is not saying do something.
Mhm.
The sensation itself is just a sensation. And when you can see that quite clearly, you can extrapolate from that there is no such thing as a want button in the body. All of the want buttons come from the stories.
Yes.
And they are, as you say, just stories. And so there's
Tiny glimpse of that. Tiny glimpse of that. Yeah.
Yep. So and once you get it right in at a grokking level that there is no want button, wants just simply don't happen. You just see stories come along and it says, "Oh yeah, chocolate ice cream would be nice," and you do or you don't. It's just a story. There is no compulsion anywhere in that sensation that says you've got to have chocolate ice cream.
Mm.
Yeah. And once you get that,
Yeah.
all your wants cease to be wants.
Yeah.
Right? You can recognize then some body preferences, but there is no compulsion to fulfill them anymore like there was before when the stories were really active. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's what I've got from this meeting is like the sensations, although they come up, they're not. I think earlier on I thought that the sensations were telling me something, and that's what I saw, that it's no different to anything else. It's a sensation, but it's come from a conditioned response to something.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's a really interesting one that you can probably see quite easily, and that is that the sensations involved with fear is pretty much the same sensation that's involved with excitement.
Yeah.
And whether it's something to be scared of or something to be anticipated depends on context
Mm.
and all the stories. So, you know, the same fear when you look standing at the bottom of the Big Dipper, that's excitement. But, you know, if that bloke's going to chase me, that's fear. But it's the
Mm.
same sensation, just different stories.
Yeah.
You know, it's not literal, but quite similar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what I saw in the conversation yesterday when I was looking at when I actually felt the sensation, it wasn't as frightening as the stories were indicating. That when you really looked at it, like, and then I could just have ears for the conversation again. I could get back to just
Mm.
being present in the conversation. But the fear was starting to rise up as a, you know, the old, what does this mean for me? Should I
Yeah,
run away?
yeah. Well, it's a
Yeah.
big one, isn't it? You know, yeah. I had an experience just a couple of days ago. I don't remember what it was, where it was, or who it was with, but it was really interesting. I was listening to somebody saying something about somebody, and I'm thinking about what's probably behind it. But then they asked me for my opinion, and it really bowled me over. It bowled me off my feet, and it was like, oh no, I don't want to have an opinion about this. That's just getting into storyland about things, you know.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
like another world. You know, let's have an opinion. You know, join me in bitching about this person or something. No,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I get that. But it's funny when I was really down. This is a memory now. As you said that, I brought this up. But when I was really low, um, like I knew I was okay. I knew I was okay. I knew that there was some stuff shifting, but I got a call from my parents, and they, you know, I didn't say anything, but they obviously heard I was low, and they and so I did the minimal I could do, just have a conversation, and you know, but actually inside I was like, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. So then they contacted my brother. He called me, and I said, oh, I'm just, you know, just a bit low. But all I wanted to do, my intuition was just to get on with my day, simply to look at this, what was coming up, but not have any. I didn't want any external to dos or like avoidance. So I could see the avoidance. And so all of them were gathering around and, you know, get in the car, come up for a few days and bring the dog and stay. And, well, why don't you treat yourself, go shopping? And and so it was really, like you were just saying, you kind of just I had to go along with the story a little bit. Just, okay, I'm okay. You know, I can go and do things and I'm okay. But when I actually got through those few days, that's when this contentment kind of came through. um to me it's like steps, you know. There's another one comes and another one comes, which is made up, but um I just feel like, even though my brain was saying this is not healthy, you should get out, you should go and do things, should go and, you know, do this, that, and the other, which, you know, to a certain mental health wise, yeah, that's okay. But I just actually wanted to have a look at what this was, like a big shadow that was lurking, and I wanted to have a look at it. Um, yeah, and I know more will come.
mm,
I know
mm.
that for sure.
It's a
But
tricky one, isn't it? And when do you listen to your intuition? Is your intuition guiding you in a appropriate way, or is your intuition just helping you divert from it? kind of thing. So how do you work out when to listen to your intuition, or what is actually intuition and what is just thoughts of escape kind of thing, and so on. So it sounded to me like when you were saying that your intuition was telling you that it would be productive to stay with what you were feeling and not divert from it. And of course, everybody around you wanted to help you divert, didn't they? They wanted to occupy you with other stuff. And because you feeling down makes them feel uncomfortable, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like what Ray was saying. They wanted to give me the sweets so that I would feel okay. But actually, you know, what is healthy is to learn how to, like, sometimes meltdowns in kids are it's good for them because I got to learn how to regulate themselves as well. And I never had that as a child. You know, I was kind of pretty spoiled, really. And protected from bad feelings. So, you know, after getting sober and getting to 53, I finally had to look at some feelings and emotions and get friendly with them, really, get to know them and do this work. But the diversions, it's interesting you say, how did I know? I suppose I just saw the diversions for what they were. I saw that I was that compulsion that we talked about before, that compulsion to do something. Am I doing it to get away from a feeling right now? And just going with the flow, like there was stuff to do, but I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to go for a walk in nature. I just did what the body wanted to do, but it wasn't a very productive day in relative terms, I suppose. But I did see some things I think I needed to see. Yeah. I don't know if all this is story, actually. Feels like a story.
Well, there's no escaping story, but and we mustn't always see all stories as of no value either. But in the beginning, it's probably a good way. But you're past that point now, where you can start to consider the value of a story. But notice again, in order to do that, you've got to be outside the story.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what happened in that conversation. I was in it, and then it literally kept coming in and out of being in it, and then being outside watching in it. Yeah. And then what was interesting is afterwards, I could see the pull. I could see the threads of pulling into another story, into what that meant to me, and into a low, just like all the bad things that could happen. It was quite negative. But there was some, I often think what you say is just, if you see something, you laugh. And I did that. Like I just kept watching them come up over and over again, what that means, and you could feel the, and I just laugh. And it didn't last long. It lasted for the afternoon, and the next day was okay again. It was fine. I was kind of dreading how I'd feel in a way. But
well, so you've got the skill now to not spiral off into things, to not let things get out of hand and just have their own.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful for these meetings, even if I can't join in. I join in when I can, but it's just, even listening, I just resonate with what everyone talks about, and it percolates over here. Yeah. So I suppose in those times when another lesson comes, this is how I see it. There seems to be some gap to not be fully immersed in it. Is that the time to kind of reach out for some guidance, or just come to these meetings? And because when I'm in it, I don't feel like I want to drag people down into a depressive place, if that makes sense. So I kind of isolate and not share it with people.
You mean at the meetings here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, so you're not the first person that said that. I don't want to lower the tone, or I don't want to drag it down, or something. The other person has said to me, who's not here tonight, but that's okay. That's not possible. No, don't. No, be spontaneous and authentic, and don't worry about that stuff. If you're going to make everybody feel depressed because you're depressed, then we've all got something to work on, haven't we? No.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. Let it happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Just be spontaneous. Don't have to think about whether anything's good or not, or what you're going to do to the meeting. See, the meeting's the meeting's interesting, isn't it? Because the meeting is not what it obviously is a composition, a compilation, if you like, or something that it's a result of everybody who's here. And it's even the result of some people who are not here.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes.
I mean, I just thought about somebody who's not here, and so I bring them here by thinking about it. Yeah. So it's like the dynamism of the meeting is because of everybody.
Yes.
It's just takes on its own identity in that way. But oh, what a wonderful identity! It has that. Yeah.
No, that's great. I'm opening my mouth because I feel content today.
Right.
But it's not always the case.
Yeah. Good stories. Good stories are great too. They give people inspiration. Yeah. Lots of good things.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I feel very thankful for that lovely story. Yeah.
Hi, Vince.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. Just to report on, I've got a little positive as well. Yesterday I had a bleed, quite a severe bleed, and I think it was from my bladder. And I've already had kidney cancer. So I remember the experience of the kidney cancer, and I was just petrified, really petrified. And all my life, I took, like, from my mother, drama. It's always had to revolve around drama. Everything had to be a big drama. And I sort of carried that with me. But during all this process, because my husband says, why'd you do it? What is it about this process and everything? You haven't changed. But I took myself off to the A&E because it was quite urgent. Took myself off. And I was as calm as anything. And I just knew that there was absolutely nothing I could do. No, there were no sense of control. There was some sort of projected stories. There was some sort of, oh God, what if? But then passed. And I was just driving. And at one point, I thought there was no way, say about 5 years ago, I could have drove myself. Not cat nails chance. I'd have had to get my husband to drive me because I would have been in one state. And I got to the hospital and I explained myself quite clearly and quite calmly. And I thought this is quite amazing. Quite amazing. And still now I don't know the outcome. It's not good. You don't just have a bleed you know, when you've had cancer and everything else. It's not good, but yeah, I'm okay in a strange sense. It's okay. It is what it is, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I know that it'll get treated in some way. Well, you think you think about get treated in some way, and but just to say that if all the process from age 19 to now, reading about this, absorbing it, if that's where it's brought me, you know, I might die next week. I don't know, but yet I'll be okay.
It'll be okay. Absolutely. Yeah, great.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where it's brought me. You know, the searching stopped. So all of that angst of searching, I just know I've got a lot of work to do on myself, and that's
Of
fine.
course. Yeah,
That's fine. That's fine.
yeah.
And if I live another 10 years, 20 years, God only knows, but then I'll work. I will work on myself and,
Yeah.
you know, keep it all relevant to
Yeah.
the work rather than just going off into panic mode and no, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? You know,
Yeah.
it's
Good
not
stuff. Yeah.
appropriate. All my body slowed right down. My blood pressure was sky high, but you know, but everything else had slowed down. My reactions had slowed right down, but to
Yeah.
what they would have been 5 years ago.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And you'll get even better at it. You'll get much better at it with practice and so on. And it's crazy when you say to people, look, it could be everything from absolutely nothing to a death sentence. And it's no difference between them, you know. It's just
There
the way it
isn't
is.
really.
Yeah, yeah.
There isn't in the moment. In the moment, there isn't.
Yeah.
Things keep coming to you about cancer. Like I listened to Penelope say about cancer, and she said it 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 doesn't matter if you've been given, you know, you got cancer, a report that says you've got cancer. You're just as dying as the next person
Yeah,
in real terms.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
know, it's just a bit different for you, and it's like, gosh,
yeah. So it comes back to the only thing that is actual is current experiencing. Everything else is just a story about something. And so
yeah.
in this current experiencing, am I feeling pain? You know, am I standing on a nail? Or is everything fine?
Mm,
And even if there's a story out there with x-rays that show that this is a terrible, terrible thing, right now I feel fine. You
mm,
know, I had bowel cancer back in 1997. I had a big operation with bowel cancer, you know, and I never felt one negative thing from the cancer. Boy, didn't I? I did from the chemotherapy though, but the
mm,
cancer
mm,
didn't didn't make me feel bad once.
mm,
Sneaky
mm.
stuff, that one, you know. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. We're the same for me with the kidney cancer. Didn't know it was there.
yeah,
But yeah, it's yeah, it's the aftercare that's the bugger. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, yeah. That sounds great. Yeah, and of course we'll work, no matter how long we live, we'll always be working on it. Or I hope we can. When I say work, we can really call it play. It's
Yeah. Okay. Play. Yeah.
we don't have to take it serious. That doesn't help.
No,
Play,
no, that doesn't help.
Playing is very productive though. Just look at
Mm,
kids playing and look at all the things they discover when they're playing.
mm, mm. Yeah, it's a discovery. It's a passive discovery. Mm. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hi, Bianca.
Hi. I'm still in this feeling that all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And maybe it's just because things are going well, and it will change. Also recent in my Buddhist Sangha, I've always had so many troubles with the founder texts, because he talks a lot about ideals, and I don't believe in pursuing an ideal. And I think it does more wrong than good. But it maybe it was his way of reaching people who are searching. And on the last meeting, we read some text, and I noticed something he said just in passing. I read this text so many times before and never seen it. That things are not things and people are not people. But wow, maybe he knows.
Yeah?
What is it about? And it was funny because before I was talking with the person who's leading these meetings exactly about this, that people are not people, and we were, oh, should we even mention it? It may be terrifying for, and well, we were not sure what to do about this. And here in text is just right in your eyes. He had no doubts. It's just like that. It's true.
So your response was almost about the synchronicity of having read it before and then hearing it, and something clicked for you. What happened for you? What was your where you're seeing a funny side in it? What's that about?
But I think I had so much distrust towards him that when reading the text, only the things that I don't agree with came up. It's like a filter.
But you said something about maybe he knows, like he there was something in the way he said it. Maybe the feeling tone of that made you think that maybe it's more than just words?
Mm, no, he's dead.
Oh,
I have only the text.
oh, right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And it's true that I know it may be very different for the people who knew him personally, and they saw this something. And I have only the text, and
Mm. So what was your how did you feel about that statement, those words?
mm, after all the talk that I had with the person leading the meetings, I thought it was bold of him, and I feel respect.
Okay. Mm.
And it also makes me think how much could I misunderstood him.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, words read are so much missing, so much of what is in a word that's said. Yeah. They're flattened out a lot. There's none of the intensity or the modulation is not there with the written word in the same way. Can change the meaning quite a lot.
I still think uh, what changes the words the most is my attitude.
Oh well, yes, yeah, that's big, that's big too. Yeah.
If I when I have so much distrust, it colors everything.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Mm.
It's hard to get at anything clearly through the filter of mistrust, isn't it? Mm.
Is mistrust selfing?
And distrust is a defense mechanism. That's for sure.
How would you approach a question like that, Marius? How would you? I mean, there's no dictionary we can consult that gives us rules like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask it in a different way. So if I believe that there is someone over there, that there is someone in that person, is that selfing? Like, you've seen that there is no self in yourself, but you still see a self in another. Is that selfing?
Mm.
Because in order to mistrust, at least how I see it, it has to be someone to mistrust, doesn't it?
There is a belief that I don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
Does a belief needs a person?
But a belief, that belief is aimed at a person, or do you distrust everyone?
I distrust beliefs.
Mm-hmm. But my question was just distrusting a specific person. Is that selfing? I'm just curious for you guys' opinion.
Mm. Well, it's a
If I
deep
may,
question. You
if
go
I
on.
may complicate, sorry.
Say that again, Mayor. I didn't quite get it.
If I may complicate things further a bit, mistrust can also be constructive for you. Mistrust towards persons or things. I mean, if a staircase is wobbly, it's completely healthy to not to use it or not to be. It doesn't have to be self. Not always.
Yeah, my answer to that is to look at what selfing is in because that's a kind of a general term. And if we use the word, are we identifying? Is there identification? Where that's a better word than selfing, in a sense, because it talks about what selfing is, and then we go, well, what is identification? What is identification? And that it's easy to see that identification involves a connection or a link between something and something, and that one of those somethings is, or let's put it another way, that link might take the form of ownership.
Mm.
And so if there is that sense of owner, then you could say, yeah, call that selfing.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the only reason to even think about that is to identify somewhere that would be productive to look at. So we don't do that to say it's wrong.
No, I'm just curious because uh, I tend to see a person on the other side, even though I've seen through self.
Hmm. Yeah, if you can still hear me, Marius.
Yeah, yeah, I'm still here.
You if you're accurate, if you look at what you're thing you're seeing or believing about other, and you're accurate, you immediately have to say, I imagine that what I am seeing is something that I would describe as a person who believes in self, or a belief in self being acted out, or something along those lines. But immediately the question comes up from Mayer's perspective, absolutely brilliant. Why bother? Why go down that road? Well, it's just totally unnecessary because you're going to see it everywhere. And if you're obsessed with seeing self in somebody else, then it probably is saying, well, there's something to look at for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been catching up on some of the threads in the LU guiding group, and specifically the Fetter lady pointing out that, yeah, you probably know what I'm talking about. So I had a day with doubt after that.
Right. Oh, Christiana, yes, I got you.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so yes, that attitude can certainly trigger doubts for sure. Mm. So yes, that's the trick here with all of this stuff. The moment we want to fit it into a framework or a bottle or a contain it in some way, we cause all sorts of strife, and again, it comes back to a whole lot of stuff is, well, it's irrelevant. So if somebody wants to be really pedantic about what defines a shift, I say let them go for it. I'm not interested in that whole thing, I know that I am different in that I have memory still of being another way to what I am these days. But my wife will say I haven't changed. Quite categorically, she'll say I haven't changed at all. And I feel like I'm a totally different person.
Yeah.
But there's no conflict there, you see, because this all happens internally pretty much. And even though I see it as, and I imagine that there is a lot of outward stuff that's different, when my wife says, no, you haven't changed, I immediately think, well, your view of me is your view of me, and it's really almost got nothing to do with me. It is the way everybody projects what they see. That's another one of those things that's such a big, huge thing that you can see. It sounds funny, and I don't want it to come across like there's any superiority there, but you can see that half the world, well, no, you can see that 95, 90, whatever percent of the world runs around having a relationship with their own fantasy all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually what I concluded as well, what you're saying. I went back to looking at what has changed, not the stories that started playing after reading what her opinion about that was.
And I say this so much, it's a lot, it's a tricky one, and it is a tricky one. But I don't, there can be 1,000 different views, and they can all be right. Because one is right doesn't mean the others are not right. It's all from whatever perspective they're being viewed from as well. So,
Yeah.
I'm pleased for her that that stuff works for her that way. It just doesn't work for me that way. And there's no right
Yeah.
or wrong, no better or worse. It's just different.
There is one thing that I don't want to say I have an issue with, but it comes up frequently. And that is, there is very little interest to do anything. It's been going on for quite a while. And at the same time, there is this energy with the story that, like, it's I call it the doer energy, that just wants to do something other than nothing. But I don't really know what I want to do. So there's like a conflict there that I can't seem to resolve. Like there's a feeling that, or there's a story that not being interested in anything will become problematic.
Mm.
And I see that whole thing as just thoughts, but
Sure, yep.
yeah.
Oh, and it may well be prophetic too. Who knows? Yeah. So again, a way into seeing what's actually going on there is to start with looking at what is there. What is there? What you say. You say, you give the impression that you don't do anything,
Yeah.
but you do. You do. You shower and you comb your hair and you come to these meetings and you are doing stuff all the time. So what are
Yeah.
you talking about? You're talking about doing something significant in a particular way? What is it? Okay, so what is actually happening? And so not doing something is not a happening. That's the absence of a happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what is actually going on for you? So is there a response to something that seems to be missing? There's some
Yeah.
kind of discomfort going on there because of the stories that say you should be doing something, or you could be productive in some way, or worthwhile in some way, or whatever the words that you want to use are that come up. But that's all storyland, all that stuff. But that can still be ways in to see what's going on. But what is actually going on for you? Where is that discontent? What does it feel like? What's underneath it?
Yeah. That's a good question.
And can it be also that it's just that body wants to move?
Yeah. But I try to stay, well, back to saying I'm not doing anything. So I do exercise and I take my dog for walks and things like that. So I do move my body. Something about, I think I want to say something about wanting to be more productive, I guess. That there's an old habit there.
Okay, so then the next thing would be to define what you mean by productive. Does
Yeah.
that involve earning money for your effort? Does that involve having something to show for it physically? Does that involve what do you call productive?
Yeah, so yeah, if I take a step back one, and we've talked about this earlier, but I'm in a place now where I need to figure out what I'm going to do next in terms of work, right? And I kind of had equanimity around that for a while when you shared this serendipity perspective of something will turn up. So I'm like, okay, that sounds like a story I want to believe in.
Yeah. But it didn't.
Yeah, still waiting for that thing to happen. And so I think that the story goes as like, okay, this lack of interest in anything is what's blocking getting anywhere with that. That is the story.
Mm.
Yeah.
And if you follow on with that, then you'll say, so the answer is that I should have an interest in something.
Yes,
And
that's the feeling.
how can I generate an interest in something?
And I can't, and I know that, right? So that's the stuckness.
So here's another one that comes up about this, with the serendipity story again. If you're looking for something, then it's going to be like you're looking through that little bit of cardboard in the center of the toilet hole roll. You're going to get around there. You're going to look around, and you're going to, where is it? Where is it? What I'm looking for,
Yeah.
And that narrow focus means that you miss out on lots and lots of stuff. Yeah. So how do you kick back and have that total vision, even if it's out of focus, but you're going to recognize movement and you can refocus. But how do you have that? How do you do that? Can you do that, or can it only just happen? Is it possible to make it happen? Is it possible to? How can you force yourself to relax? How can you do not doing?
I did not doing for quite a while. Well, I didn't do it, but I did a lot of not doing for quite a while.
There was a
So
lot of not doing happening.
yeah,
Maybe you
exactly.
didn't put. Did you put effort into not doing?
No,
No. So you
because
didn't do not doing. It just happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that kind of happened naturally, as I said, after our previous talk on this topic.
Mm, mm.
And it can also happen just by seeing the stories, and that happens as well, but they keep coming back with higher frequency lately.
Well, when they come back like that, that says something too. That says something that the persistence in that is that there's something that keeps getting triggered.
Yeah.
Does serendipity, which is an interesting story, I guess, does serendipity include that it doesn't happen as much as it does happen?
What happens?
Well, it not happening.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah,
something,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I've thought about that as well.
So if nothing turns up that grabs your interest, do you run out of money and die of starvation?
No,
Not
not yet.
likely, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as I've shared before, I have been like a year away from work due to burnout, and this year has been like I can see how it was really needed. Uh, so the circumstances has been I can see how it was the circumstances that I needed to kind of recover.
Mm.
Um,
But does recover mean get back into a working ability again, or does recover mean allow the healing from the burnout to happen?
yeah, allow the healing from the burnout to happen. Definitely, I can. I can. mm, I like to use the analogy where I was kind of frozen in a block of ice when I got burned out, and I've been slowly thawing out and becoming a person again. So I guess I'm feeling like I'm pretty much ready to get back out there, maybe, or there's some energy moving, but
Hmm.
there's nothing to move towards because the lack of interest.
Mm.
And
So
you,
you go on.
I just want to say that usually, like before this whole shift, there were a lot of motivation centered around egotistical
Yeah,
stories,
yeah,
right?
I get that. Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of robs you, doesn't it? When you think, oh well, that's just for the. I might as well masturbate as chase all of those things, you know. Um, yeah. So it would appear to me that there's a part of you that wants something, how can I put it, new and exciting to to seduce you into uh, following that and getting paid for it would be nice too.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll have some of that.
Yeah. So so how so when you say there's a lack of interest, and it's again it's a hard one, a tricky one. There's that thing of it's an absence of something. How do you detect? How do you get closer to or look at that absence of something? Well, the absence of something really is a reflection of the presence of something. So the absence of something, that lack of motivation, that's a story.
Mm.
And what there isn't there is what you want. The opposite of that story of nothing motivating you is that there will be some interest that'll take you in a direction. And that's not there.
Yeah.
So what is there? So is the lack of motivation, and we can just talk about that, but be very loose, be very aware that that's a shitty description of something, that lack of motivation. Is
Mm.
that is that there is a story of hope, that there is something there that will get you all excited again, and you'll get paid for that too, that you just haven't found yet. Does it have to be that?
Yeah, I think you're close to something there. Because, yeah, my previous work, I kind of hated that job for the last 15 years.
It's a long time to hate it, yeah.
Yeah, which was basically, I think, a big reason for the burnout because there was resistance the whole day,
Yep,
almost.
yep.
So there has been like for that whole time, a story about finding something that I enjoy doing. So that story is probably still there, yeah. Yeah. That I should have something that I enjoy doing
Ooh.
as an occupation.
So if we look at that, it immediately comes down to me that this idea that is that something out there going to contain that enjoyment?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like my intellectual answer would be I don't think so, probably not.
No. It becomes obvious with that question that enjoyment is something that is about your attitude towards something.
Yeah.
So when
And
I was a kid,
yeah, go on.
we had blokes who used to come around and empty the toilet can, uh, and they got paid really well. By golly, they smelled after a while. But uh, do you think it's possible that you could enjoy carrying shit cans to the truck for a living and get paid for it?
Yeah, so this is a good question that I did have for the last, let's say, 3 years of hating my job is like I see that this is my attitude, but I have no control over my attitude.
Sure,
Like I,
absolutely. Yep.
I still hate it.
Mm.
So there was a big conflict there, like trying to change my attitude towards it, but it wasn't happening, obviously.
Yeah. No, it makes it
Yeah.
worse, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But so what about the magic wand that the genie could wave over you, and all of a sudden it wouldn't matter what the job was that you are doing, that there'll be enjoyment of that with the magic wand
Yeah.
thing. Mm. Were you good at your job?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would say so.
I imagine that the burnout itself, it's a pretty generic kind of term, but I get what it means and what it's applied to. But that whole thing comes from the opposite of that genie's magic wand of being happy with whatever you're doing. And what it means is that he picked up the wrong wand or he used the wrong end of the wand. And what it means is that you hated that job and you kept telling yourself how much you hated that job and
Yeah,
how hard it was on you. And that was where the exhaustion came from,
yeah,
more than the job itself. It wasn't the job itself. It was,
yeah. You're totally right about that. I have so so that point that you're bringing up now has been on my mind for a few months. That like, oh, maybe I should just give it another try at my current job. I still have a job there. I'm on sick leave.
yeah. Well, of course, as soon as we look at it and we get a bit closer to it, it could well be that part of the reason why it it you responded to it in the way you did wasn't the job itself, but rather the other people in the job. You know, the political or the power structure of the job, or something along those lines. Maybe it wasn't the job,
Yeah,
wasn't the work you were doing, but rather the environment that you were doing it in. Maybe.
yeah, it definitely contributes the corporate environment and the kind of squeezing as much as you can out of the employees' attitude, top-down attitude. So that is a big part of it. But another part was that I felt like it was so mental, and well, I used to overthink a lot. That has become a lot better after the shift. But I kind of felt like that type of work perpetuated my overthinking. So it kept me in storyland when I knew that that was unproductive for where I really wanted to go. So there was a conflict there as well. So even now so yes, the burnout can mean many things for many people, but what happened to me is that suddenly my brain or my mind just felt like it stopped working. So I was like, I couldn't find words. I couldn't really think complicated processes anymore, which was a big part of my job. So when I had a tool up here that didn't work, I couldn't really do my job, and that created stress for me as well. I created new stories. Yeah.
Compounds it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And even now, I can feel like if I get too mental, there is a sensation that reminds me of when that first happening in my head. So it's just like a contraction in my head almost.
Yeah, you've been sensitized to all those things as well, I guess. So that, yeah. So it's I presume it's a pretty big corporation you're working for that can afford to keep you on sick leave for a year.
Oh, it's the government that pays
The government
after a
department,
period.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what would happen if you never got better? Could you go on like this for the rest of your life?
No, so the sick leave is finished this month, middle of this month. So then I could apply for some type of other support for 3 years. But that would be 60% of my normal salary. But I could
Right.
still survive.
You could survive on that, yeah.
But I don't like. There's a story here that says I don't want to live that life. I
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah. Is there any chance that you could move sideways to a different department, do a different job, but still be employed by the same people?
Perhaps, but yeah, they would look at where I would be useful, and like it's.
Back to the old stuff.
I've been in sales for a long time, and I got to the point where I couldn't do that anymore, so I transferred to another similar position, but it wasn't the chasing of the sales anymore. It was more of a taking care of new customers and trying to upgrade them. But it's basically the same, maybe even more complicated, like mental processes.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of stress in that kind of thing that you're talking about. That up customer oriented upgrading stuff. Push, push, push. Yeah.
So I come back to just adopting your serendipity story for a bit longer. See what happens.
Sure. Yeah, with that, again, just getting better and better at doing it might mean not having expectations, or probably more accurately, not having hopes
Yeah.
about what might turn up or how it might turn up and so on. Because even that narrows our focus to a degree.
Yeah.
And the lateral thinking is good value, so sideways stuff, thinking of that. So if you were to contemplate what would be your ideal job, and if you come to some loose idea about that and then polish it a little, but as you do, because you're thinking at it from that point of view, you might even make lists to start off with, what my ideal job would not be something or other, and it would be something else, so yeah, I would hate sales stuff. I used to do a bit of that too, and it's so um, end point focused on that
Yeah.
getting the money, getting a
It's a
signature,
black
whatever. Yeah.
and it's a black hole, it's never enough, no matter how good you do.
Yep. Yep.
There's always like, okay, but you can do better.
Mm.
There is a story as well that I've had for a long time, that I want to do something good for people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like there's been a recognition that for a while, or for a long time, there was a lot of self-centeredness here. And when seeing that, there was a new story created about not liking that part of me.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, it's never going to change in terms of the overall thing. There'll always be self-centeredness. Everybody's like that. That's the nature of being human. But it's how we relate to that. That's the actual where the value is. Yeah.
Yeah, but so on top of that as well, I've done some kind of, we call it men's work. So I facilitated different retreats or men's circles and things like this that I saw was actually productive and helpful for people. So that gave me a sense of meaning in a way. Like I was actually doing something
Absolutely. Yeah.
meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah. Well, that's a great opportunity. You were able to do that at work.
No, that was outside of work.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame you couldn't do that and get paid for it and keep your superannuation and all that. Mm.
Yeah.
So if you leave that department and go somewhere else, then that's also going to happen, isn't it? You'll lose the continuity for your superannuation and so on.
Not necessarily. They now in Norway, there's like, they have to keep you on at least 1 year from the first day you get sick leave, and then after that they're free to let you go. So that year mark is coming up right now, and I fully expect them to to let me go.
Cut you loose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said that thing about those groups and doing good stuff like that, and that's absolutely, you can just see how fulfilled you could be helping other people and doing things like that. It certainly feels good for me. How can you monetize that without interfering with it as well? That's another trick as well. Yeah. How do you do that for a living? It's nice if you could be working for a corporation that did that kind of stuff and actually get paid to do it. That would be even better. Yeah. And lots of departments have that kind of stuff going from their HR department or something as well. Maybe
Yeah.
you could put something to your employees about doing something along those lines. Yeah. There must be a lot of people who are getting close to burnout, and you know enough about it now to help them if you you
Yeah.
whatever. But at the same time, I have to. There's a caveat here. There's a warning that says, we all pretty much, no matter who, not long after getting through the gate, we want to save the world, and that often
That's been
doesn't
there
work out well.
before the
Yeah,
gate as well.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been such a big part of my life, the seeking and the self-development and all of that. That was like my only interest almost for such a long time. So there was a story that I wanted to do something along those lines to offer, like create a business or something to offer something, but this shift has kind of changed a lot of
Yep,
the
yep.
way I
Take
view those
yeah.
things. So yeah, I'll let someone else go now if
Thank you.
somebody has something.
I just wanted to step in saying that, yeah, for example, my job, I'm quite fine with it, although like objectively, I would have to say it's not the best conditions. Sometimes it's also a bit toxic surrounding. Then, yeah, the system itself doesn't really work. And it could be frustrating because people, I mean, I'm a German teacher and people come to learn German, but not because of out of their own motivation. They get money from the state and then they are kind of obliged to do those courses. And I guess to learn a language which is a bit complicated, you would need a positive motivation. And if you are in a difficult life situation, not knowing what will be, it's like not very likely to be super motivated. So I basically teach complicated things to people who are not able to really, yeah. So it doesn't feel that right, actually. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, to spend a lot of energy for teaching people things that they don't want to know or they are not open for at that moment of their lives is like, yeah. I mean, there are still some people who take the advantage, or on the other hand, I think it could also be at least people come out of their flats and have like a social interaction, and maybe they have some fun. But yeah, I mean, I also sometimes have to teach like 8 hours, and that's obviously not healthy. I mean, afterwards, I really feel like shit, but I kind of adapted to it as well. I don't really, yeah, I do understand that it has to do with your way of seeing the situation. So I'm not judging or evaluating really this work, but on the other hand, for me, that does not mean that I have to do it for the rest of my life either. You know, I mean, for example, now I started to do some extra qualifications that I can do online, like after work. And it's not really because I think that this will fulfill me more than the job that I'm doing now, but I just enjoy learning about it. It's actually about burnout prevention and stress reduction. And there are also a lot of things to learn for myself in it. And it's not really because of an outcome that I'm expecting, but yeah, I think there are opportunities to, I don't know, to do some extra qualification about something you can relate to, and maybe, yeah, as was said before, maybe you can work with your own experience in that way. It was just an idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure. I kind of like that idea as well about trying to work with this experience that I have now. Just have to figure out how that looks like.
I also saw similar situation. Yeah, I had such a crisis, and I like when I had sick leave for 2 months. And yeah, I was afraid that I will come back to the job and it will happen again. So I understand the fear. But, well, you don't know. Maybe it will happen, maybe not. There was something that I've learned from it, that I don't have to be excellent at my work. I don't have to. I don't have to. It's not worth it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So, and for me, in the end, it happened again, and when I changed my work, but it doesn't have to be like this for you.
Yeah, the challenge for me here is that I still experience these mental challenges. So I'm actually just waiting around for that to resolve. And I went to a cognitive psychologist who said that that might never become as it was again. So I might have to get used to have a decline. Like what she said is that I'm having a declined ability to learn new stuff as an after effect of this burnout. And my job was basically learning new stuff that I could upgrade my customers with, because we will keep developing new technology. So it would just be for me to kind of, if that would never resolve itself, it would be putting myself in a very stressful situation where I felt like I couldn't learn what I'm supposed to be learning. So I would always like be behind, which is how I felt before I got sick leave. So I will see. Like, I'm not going to go back. I know that I'm not going back if I still have the same challenge. And then it's about like, now it's been such a long time, like I said, a year. So I feel like maybe it's time to just accept that this is something that I need to live with. And maybe not, but maybe I should try to kind of move into another direction rather than to try to hold on to this old job. So don't get burnout, folks. It sucks.
But I was just wondering, I mean, it sounds a bit strange to me, like to call it awakening process, but I mean, this requires a lot of curiosity and ability to learn. So, and you are obviously on this path. So,
yeah.
I was just wondering, like maybe it's difficult for you to learn things you just don't resonate with. Could that be
That could
true?
definitely be true.
Yeah.
I have thought about that as well.
Yeah. No, learning is another thing, and the brain is the plasticity of the brain is absolutely amazing. You know, so I wouldn't. I mean, that was probably a worst case scenario that you've just grabbed hold of there with that what that person said to you.
Yeah.
I would say,
No,
yeah.
I haven't really adopted that story there, but it is there definitely. But
Do you
I've also
meditate,
just been,
Marius?
no, I never, like I've tried on and off, but it
Yep.
never caught me.
I came across something a couple of days ago that caught my interest, and it may be of value to you. I don't know. And it was a headband with things like these ones, but it was a headband around the forehead, and it was a biofeedback mechanism that looked at the brainwave patterns, and it coupled with an app for teaching basically mindfulness, I suppose you'd say. But that looked to be a really good thing. So biofeedback kind of gives you something to work with, but certainly that can change the way your brain works fairly quickly doing that kind of stuff. And that was a bloody expensive headband too. It was like 500 Australian dollars of maybe US dollars, I don't know. But anyway, it was a lot of money for that headband. So I didn't go there, but I was tempted. So some kind of a, you know, I would suggest at this stage, and it's a very, excuse me, a bit flippant on my part to make presumptions and to say this, but I would say that a good thing might be for you to search through YouTube looking for a guided meditation. And I've actually been going to put one together for somebody else, and I didn't get to it yet. But anyway, some kind of a guided meditation that you could sit down. And I would suggest that in the beginning you look for something that is about 10 minutes long. No, don't go for an hour long anything or other at the moment. And if you can, if that resonates with you, to sit and close your eyes and listen to that and get into your feelings and so on, then that will help brain healing pretty fast. because you change brainwave patterns when you meditate and when you get into a self-hypnotic state, and listening to a guided meditation would certainly help that. Or I'll make one for you, something along those lines for you to do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That motivates me to try it again.
Yeah, have a quick look through YouTube and so on and see what you can find, because there will be a lot of different ones there. But with some of you have heard this story before, but after I had my bowel cancer operation and they took out the cancer and 1/3 of my bowel, they did a colonoscopy and I had lots of polyps, and so they wanted to take out the rest of my bowel, not because just as a preventative for cancer. And I said, give me another colonoscopy in 6 weeks, and they booked me in for one in 10 weeks. And then I went off to a yoga ashram, a Satchinanda ashram, and I did yogic cleansing and a lot of yoga nidra. And because I had a period of my life where I was a hypnotherapist, I also knew about self-hypnosis, and I did self-hypnosis basically for that 10 weeks. And what I did was I imagined a team of about 200 little individuals that were about, not even a centimetre big. They were just miniature individuals, but they all had their high-vis vests on, so they all had the yellow, luminous yellow vests on and so on, and they all ran around with high-pressure sprayers in my bowel, and they just worked on the wall of my bowel and from the inside. And not only were they cleaning it, but the pressure from the water sprayers was inducing blood flow and getting a healing, healthy thing happening like that. And I just imagined that every day I did that for an hour or so, and in the beginning even more than that. And when I went back for a colonoscopy in 10 weeks, they said, oh, we must have made a mistake because we can't find any polyps at all, not a single one. So that's my bowel, not my brain, but it's probably not any different in that way. So if you can imagine something like that team of little blokes running around in your brain and checking on synaptic connections and making sure they're healthy and polishing them up and cleaning them up and repairing the threads of this and that to whatever in your brain, it will have an effect. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all right. I'll put together one for you. I'm excited to do that now, talking about it. Yeah. So we'll have
Cool.
these little buggers around there working on healing your brain up. Yeah.
Yeah, I can picture those little minions in my brain now.
Yeah. I mean, it
appreciate
just
that.
blows me away. It was so effective for me, that it was like, wow, I can't believe that could happen. It was like magic. Yeah. But it actually
Yeah.
happened. I have scientific proof that it happened. Interesting stuff.
I
It
always
helps to
think,
hear stories like that because then it helps to believe in it in
Yeah.
a way.
Sure.
What you're gonna say, Bianca?
I always think that there is one condition: if you really want this.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely part of it for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mind you, I can't imagine anybody wanting anything other than to get better and healthier. Certainly couldn't imagine wanting anybody wanting to get worse.
Well, I can imagine like if I get better, then I will have to work hard again. So I don't want to get better.
I guess so. Yeah, it could. Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty limited imagining I had, wasn't it?
I have the urge.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marius, go on. When you're finished, then
No, I
can
was
say
just gonna
mine.
say I have for the longest time had sort of a identification with my intellect for a long time. So losing my cognitive abilities has kind of helped me lose that identification as well. So there is a gift in there somewhere, I guess. So go on, Maya.
Well, I really have. This meeting is completely mind-blowing for me from the beginning until now. And as Louisa said, even if you're just here, if you're just listening, you gain something. But well, I'm a German teacher at the university level, hating my job, dealing with students that don't want to be here. I'm a bowel cancer survivor with a crazy story behind it. I have an autistic daughter, and when I'm listening to you, when you are talking, you are saying things for me the whole time. And I am very, very identified with my intellect. This is my whole life from the beginning. This has been my whole life from the beginning. So I don't know. I mean, what took me so long to get into a group? I might have been waiting for this one. I don't know. And thank you all so much. I don't know how to express the gratitude. There are no words. And I know
Thank
this
you for
feeling
sharing.
that Helen said, being in a position during my chemotherapy, the position, it's okay if I live or if I die, it's the same. I've been through it. I started clinging onto my life after that when I regained my health. But everything that was said today, having a children, being a bad parent, judging myself for being a bad parent, wanting a new job and being crazy about it. I need a new job. I need a new job. Marius, for you, I'm after that now. I let go somehow. I decided to stay at my job. I know I need to change it, but there is no this crazy thinking about it all the time, being obsessed about it. There's no obsession. So I'm staying with my old job until something else serendipitously comes up.
So just to add, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just to add my 5 cents, I used to be a teacher, forcefully retired because of burnout. I'm healed of breast cancer without any medical interventions. I have a daughter who was sexually abused and is now like labeled as borderline personality. And so there is a constant questioning about parenting also. So it's just, I think we are a very well selected group of people here.
Isn't that amazing, eh?
Just, Vince, just since I have the microphone open, I'd like to thank you for what happened last Saturday. It was very important for me. You won't even remember because you have lots of these meetings, but it was about my son, who is not appreciative sometimes, even aggressive, and that causes me a lot of pain. Actually, my daughter also. We were talking about my son, but both of my children are sometimes like that. They can be very, very nice, extremely, but sometimes they just sort of, I don't know even how I could define. Anyway, you made me see that this was coming. It was related to my mom wanting me to be always better and better. It was almost perfect. Every time it was almost perfect, but you can do better. So me like not being, it's not that she didn't accept me. She meant it for the best. But you know, my sensation was that it was never enough. And then nothing clicked. And then you said something like, maybe you need to forgive, because I told you I had forgiven my mom for that, obviously. And then you said, probably you need to forgive yourself for buying into her thoughts. I mean, for believing that I had to be always like more than good, that one had to make this effort to always give the best of himself or herself. And that made me cry when you said it. And I recognized that this was it, that I had to forgive myself for buying into that belief. I made it my belief somehow. And now, how can I say? Since every day in this last week, I have tried to, just to watch it, to look at it. And I realize that although I'm not as tough with myself as I used to be, I'm not as demanding, but still, I partly believe it. I still do somehow believe that once what one is here for, is to give his best or her best. So I realize that I have made it into a belief. So when I don't give my best, I can almost not do it, So I feel like I'm a little bit in a trap, because on one hand, I recognize that I have to forgive myself for believing this. And on the other hand, I'm still believing it somehow. So what? I don't know if I made it clear. Did I make it clear?
Yeah, that's pretty clear, I think, for everybody.
So I'm not like in the past, I used to exhaust myself. So it went as far as having a burnout. I'm not like that anymore. I'm not so extreme anymore, but I'm still,
Yep.
a little bit like that. And by the way, just in brackets, I wanted to say to Marius that I had a strong identification with my intellect, and my biggest fear in life was not to die or anything, but was to go crazy.
Not be able to use your intellect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny, sad that we go to kindergarten and we start getting brainwashed at that point about how good smart kids are, and we tolerate the ones that are not smart. And
Yeah.
then as we move through school, you get those ones that continue to put their intellect on a pedestal, and those ones that go the other direction altogether because they're just not good at that. And so we get this division, it's crazy division between everywhere, between those who still hold their intellect as something wonderful and those who put shit on it just all the time.
It's weird because I was never a good student. I was the troublemaker in school, and but I have this story from when I was young where my mom got the offer for me to skip a class because I was ahead of the children in my class. And she used to tell me this story, so it didn't mean anything to me at that time. I was just a kid, didn't care about that. But I think that created a belief that I like the intellect was an important thing, and my whole education, well, I stopped after high school basically because I just it wasn't a place for me to learn. So there was like a conflict there where I praised my own, or like I had this story that I had a high intellect, but I also didn't do good at school. And so I had to prove myself after school doing other intellectual things. It's just interesting how that becomes like a belief.
Yeah, and there could be lots of contradictory things in there too. I mean, some kids who are very smart get bored and then they become troublemakers.
Yeah.
Other kids who are not at all very smart are bored because they can't take it in and they become troublemakers. So, it can be from both ends of the thing as well. Yeah. Again, it's all about experience, isn't it? If you have a good experience at school, then you're generally happy to keep going. If you have a bad experience, that's not for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that thing about I see it, but it still happens. So of course is the idea that just seeing what's going on is really powerful, and that can be enough to break a whole lot of things if they're not more deeply ensconced in us. But if we see them and we see clearly, we see the process that's going on, we see what triggers it, and yet it still happens, it would suggest that there's stuff further down, deeper stuff to look at. Because things will keep coming back until we resolve them, or we go back to the old way of just distracting from it and then pretending it's not there and get into a denial state. So if things keep coming back and you see it happening, you see it clearly, and it still happens, that's the time to get help, get somebody to work with, to help you see through that thing that you're just not seeing by yourself. How utterly amazing, though, that commonality, so much stuff said tonight that everybody identifies with. Is amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Everything. Everything. including offers to skip classes. Did I mention the burnout 3 times? I forgot to mention.
How was that experience for you, Maya? Burnout.
One of them, I was head of my department, and we, as professors, are appointed to this position. We don't want it because we don't know anything about administration, but we have to do it. At the end of my 2 years period, I was unable to respond to emails anymore. I didn't open my emails I stopped opening my emails. And there were some consequences because of that. There was a professor who sued us for something crazy. And after the third one, I got diagnosed with cancer. So
Yeah, I think that's I don't want to create any stories here, but I have an autoimmune disease, and I have a story that resisting chronically over such a long time creates disease.
I would agree.
So, yeah.
Yeah, heck, you can't live with stress hormones in your body forever and not have something come out of it. My
Yeah,
golly.
exactly.
And it's kind of weird, but and this is a big story, of course. Our whole society seems to require stress as a fuel. Everything can involve a huge amount of stress, from just staying at home, doing some shopping, cooking, housekeeping. Can be incredibly stressful, or not. It's yeah.
That's what I kind of call the doer energy, or what I referred to earlier, is that I feel like it's so ingrained in me to do, like to is this stress pattern that just is still there, that's telling me that it's not okay to not do. And I think that is like a big part of so many of us.
And so you would see a procedure there happening that you get stressed, or if I put it another way, the compulsion to do something is a way of relieving the discomfort that comes up from not doing something.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so you kind of heap stress on stress there. You got the stress of not doing something, and then the stress of having to do something to relieve it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ho fatto calendario con gli appuntamenti disponibili. Stiamo facendo lavori.
Well, it's just come up 10 past midnight here. Yeah, that was a pretty fast 3 hours.
Wow, yeah. Has it been 3?
Yeah.
So I was an hour late then. Yeah.
I didn't quite notice. Yeah, you probably were. So what's your time zone? In Norway. What would be?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
He didn't know the answer for that.
That was my Siri saying that, my watch.
I was also going to ask, did you start at 8 p.m. Sydney time or 9 p.m.?
9 p.m.
Ah, okay. Fine. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm looking
Yeah.
at my world time buddy now, and it's telling me that Pacific Daylight Time is about to change, and so is Central Daylight Time and New York Time and Mountain Time and Canadian Ontario Time. So all over the Americas, they're about to change their daylight saving thing tomorrow.
Just to make it clear, Leonard, what time are the Saturday meetings starting now for us? Because you're in the same time zone as me.
Yeah, I guess then it's at 11.
At
Because
11, right? I came at 1. Oh my goodness, I came
I
2
was
hours late.
I was also a bit confused about the time.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
that's a mind boggle. Yeah, yeah. So this today for me is, well, it's now Sunday, but this is a Saturday night meeting at 9 p.m. Sydney time. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other two meetings that I have during the week are at the same time as they were. I didn't change them. So that one will be at my, oh, that's, all right. No, I think it won't change again. And so it'll be my 6 a.m. on my Monday morning.
Tess is scheduled for all day tomorrow.
Oh, go away. No, Monday, I've got 7 a.m. in my calendar now. Is that right? Yes, it's 7 a.m. Monday and 4 p.m. Wednesday are the other two times of mine for Sydney time. Yeah.
4 p.m. Which day, Sydney?
4 p.m. is my Wednesday, Sydney time. And for most of the world, it'll be the day before that. We're an odd one down here in Australia.
That's 6 a.m. for me.
Yeah. 5 a.m.
Yeah, if any of the times do not suit you, let me know, and I'm happy to adjust them to suit maximum people or whatever.
Or
Yeah,
I can be late.
I'm probably not going to be able to make 6 a.m. But if it's only me, then I'll catch this one.
Is it okay if we come too late?
No, of course, yeah, it's okay to come anytime. Yeah, I don't. I'm not funny about that.
Have a good night, Vince.
Thank you. I will. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.